Mubarak, what's up?
Hey man, how are you? What's going on?
Good, good. First of all, how is lockdown in the UAE?
Well, I would like to say crazy, but I would rather say interesting, to be honest. So it got quite crazy like every other part of the world that have experienced COVID, which is we had a 24 hours lockdown. And a day before Ramadan started, they announced kind of relaxation of the lockdown. So we went from 24 hours to I believe, yeah, to now 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 8
So wait,
a.m. to 10 p.m.
so a 24-hour lockdown, you mean you couldn't even go out for exercise?
No, you can't.
Wow.
Nothing. You're
And
not allowed to go anywhere.
how long was that switched on for? Like where you couldn't even leave the house?
More than 2 weeks. And you, if you needed to leave the house for like groceries or anything, you needed a permit.
Wow.
Yeah, so you go on this website that is hosted by Dubai Police, and you put your reason, and then you put your license plate number if you have to go by car, you put your Emirates ID, our national ID card number and whatever, and then you wait like less than 10 minutes and you just get the permit or you get rejected. And sometimes you
Wow.
actually get, I have gotten rejected before, like you actually
What was
get
the reason
rejected.
for being rejected? Like if you gone too many days in a row?
They don't tell you, man. It's Dubai Police, man. You don't. This is not the UK where you have the right to know why. You just
So
say rejected.
if it's day like 5, you've whatever, you didn't buy enough groceries, you're starving, there's nothing in the cupboard, and you get rejected, like you have to go. What do you do? Do you knock on your friend's house? What do you do?
You sit at home and shut up. No, but
Wow.
the reality of things is you can go to your neighborhood grocery shops or supermarket, no problems. Like there are grocery shops and supermarkets everywhere. Like if you go to your neighborhood supermarket, chances are the police will not stop you on the way.
Hmm.
If you needed to like go all the way across the highway to go to another part of the city, like then you might end up in a checkpoint where they would ask you for a permit.
Of course.
But every within neighborhoods, within communities, there are no checkpoints because they actually had checkpoints. Like across the road from my house, I could see a checkpoint coming into my area. Like they actually ask you for permits. So if you're going to just a supermarket you won't get checked. So and if you went out without a permit and get caught, and you can show that you went to the pharmacy or it was some emergency, they will just let you go. If not, you
Okay,
get
fair enough.
a huge fine. It's like 2,000 dirham fine.
Are you serious?
Yes.
That's like £400.
Yeah.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah.
Just for going
It's
groceries. Like,
just for going groceries, man. Isn't that insane? But now we have that obviously lifted. So now you can kind of, it's more relaxing to, go shopping. It's more relaxed to go, you can do more now. And the malls are open, by the way. They've opened the
okay.
malls. But most of the shops are like very strict. Like they have the sign of how many people can be in the shop at the time. Many shops still not open, so
How about
it's
offices?
offices are still offices. Some offices, depending on what you do, are open, but they are open based on the same rule from the beginning of COVID-19. So depending on what you do, you have to reduce the number of staff by like 50 or 70% sometimes. Some offices can only have 30% of their staff at a time in the office. So there are many companies and offices that are basically turning their so basically they ask their employees, half of the employees come this week, the other half come next week.
Rotational.
Yes, and I have a company that I've worked with many times. They have nobody in the office, so they're an interior design and construction company. So they have
Mhm.
obviously activities going on in their sites because they have projects, but they also have um, an office. Like they recently like expanded their office, but no one is there, shut down.
Interesting. So the scene's been little bit different here. So until Sunday, when the Prime Minister made some announcements, it was a full lockdown. So across the UK, everybody had to stay home. You could only leave for essential groceries or medical or hospital care, and you could have one exercise slot a day for 1 hour. You can go out for an exercise slot a
Wow.
day, right? So on Sunday, so we were like that for 7, 8 weeks. And on Sunday, he made the announcement. that he's going to loosen restrictions somewhat. So now people can go to work if they can't work from home. They're allowed to go to work and socially distance. And we're allowed unlimited exercise now, but you still can't mix. You still can't mix with households. So I know from speaking to some people in Dubai, like people are still going to see their friends and mixing with family. Here, like, you know, I can't even see my mother. You can't go to another household. You can only be with the people in your household. If you want to see somebody from another household, you can meet them one person with one person, and you have to be 2 meters apart in an outdoor place.
Wow. So, but what if you just left to go to your mom's house? What would happen? Like
so this is where the great British public is really good, right? So similar to what you're saying, I don't think anything would happen. They'd find it really hard to track me or trace me, and I would just go and I would go home, right, and see my mom, and nobody would be able to see it otherwise. But the whole point is this country is everybody has the ethics and the morals to go, no, we're all in this together. We all need to play our part. And if I start to see my mother and what's stopping everybody else, everybody's got a reason to break the rules. And if everybody breaks the rules, then where do we end up? We just end up in a vicious cycle. And obviously the other thing is here, we did get hit with the hard end of the stick. Like we've suffered a lot of tragic deaths here. So I think that fear is a bit more heightened here because a lot of people know somebody that's been affected, and it hits home a lot more. Yeah, exactly. And it hits home a lot more.
I mean, generally, people here as well are quite conscious and not being reckless. But to be honest, I would say we have more people here being reckless. Like, you know, there've been reports of, like, you know, just some people, especially like the labor workers that like are quite stubborn, going to, like, you know, just hang out in public areas outside and of course the government took it very, very seriously, and they're taking very severe actions on people who are doing that. So, you know, it's and of course we don't have as much, you know, crazy statistics as you guys. But the thing is, you've been to Dubai many times. It's so obvious how things have changed. Like, you know, the Dubai. I'm sure you've gone to Dubai Mall and sat down and watched the dancing fountain in Burj Khalifa, and none of that, man. Like, that's all shut down.
And honestly, like when on the news they show the helicopter views of London, it's so creepy when you see, like, again, similar to Dubai, one of the busiest cities in the world, just completely ghost town. Like, it's it really feels like the apocalypse. So it's really
exactly.
So one of the things this was something that hit me quite hard was, you know, we're sat here in the UK, and I was speaking to my mum yesterday, and we were thinking, look, you know, you're getting a bit annoyed now. You've been locked in the house for 8 weeks, and I always, whenever there's any, you know, moments like that, I always try to bring a level of perspective into my thinking. So I sat there and I was thinking, look, we're sat in the UK. We've got Netflix, we've got Wi-Fi, we've got multiple devices, we've got groceries delivered to us, abundance of groceries. The supermarkets are full with every product that I want still, alhamdulillah. So you've got all of that stuff there. The government is supporting businesses. They're paying wages of those that are sitting at home, even if the company can't afford it. The government's paying their wages, and they've committed to doing that until October. And then I think to myself, you've got countries like Pakistan or some of the lesser developed countries where the leaders have made announcements to say we're having to stop lockdown, not because it's safe, but because we have to make a choice. We either let our population die of hunger, which is a fact. Like, it's going to happen. If they lock down and they've got no earnings, they've got no income, the government can't pay for the income, they will die of hunger. Or we make them have a risk of catching COVID. Now, imagine being that leader in that situation where you're stuck between a super hard rock and a hard place. Like, that is a real problem. And like us sat here in the UK, you've got so many people complaining, oh, I can't go to the pub, I can't go to the bar, I want to go to a restaurant, I want to go to a cinema. Like, I get it, but just that level of perspective to say, hang on, you're okay. If you had to stay home with all these devices and everything in place for another couple of weeks, you're going to be okay. Like, nobody in these countries are going to let you starve to death. And that's a sad reality and tragic reality in some of these other countries. So my question there, really, we spoke to Casper on the last episode, and it was clear in Thailand, whilst they were trying, there wasn't much government support for businesses. What's the situation in the UAE? I know you're running your company, Aceplace. How are the government doing anything to help companies, startups, more mature companies, larger, more established companies? What initiatives have they put in place?
So generally, what is going on right now is the initiatives are being announced. Some of them have been announced a few weeks back, and they're just being rolled out, but it's just quite cloudy. The access to these supports, these support frameworks are still there's still a huge gray area of who gets what and how can you get access to these different support frameworks.
So
So
has any support been accessed by businesses? Have businesses received any support yet, or are these just initiatives where nobody's figured out how to actually get the support?
okay, so there is, immediately it was obvious that the world is going to be, the world and UAE at the UAE level is where we're going to be shut down for quite a while. The UAE announced, I believe, about the UAE central banks announced $100 billion injection into the economy, a lot of which is supposed to like support SMEs and things like that. And so far, there are a lot of people talking about, okay, who gets this? How can you actually apply for it? So it's not been rolled out yet because it's just happening. But that has been announced officially that they're injecting $100 billion into the economy. That's one. Number two, the other framework of support you should understand is first you have to remember that in Dubai, there are two different company setup structures. It's either the mainland where you set up with like a how
And then
can I say,
you have free zones, don't you, as
you
well?
have the free zones, exactly. So you have like one setup where you get to where you set up with you have to have a local partner, which is called Dubai Economic Department, and then you have the free zones, which before years back it used to mean a huge difference. There are certain services you cannot even do with a free zone, so you have to have a local partner.
Yeah.
Or the only main the one of the other main reasons why people go for that is if you're opening like a supermarket or a grocery store or something that needs to be stationed somewhere, and you want to open that place or that supermarket or salon or whatever in a location that is not a free zone, then you need a mainland license. So now with a lot of like digital companies, with a lot of like companies who don't need all those things that the mainland license provide, it's lit for many companies. Like for me, the mainland license and the free zone offer me exactly the same thing. The free zone license
Right.
doesn't hinder me in any way. Um, and also another thing is these free zones have developed so much to offer most of those things they didn't used to offer that you needed a mainland license for. So there used to be a bunch of things you cannot do, but now with the mainland license, like for example, it used to be more difficult to open a bank account with a free zone and all of that. They've developed so much, and you pretty much get the same thing now. And anyways, the free zone is also um, you know, uh, governed by the government of Dubai, so it's all good. Now, I just wanted to explain that for you so you understand the second system of support. So, a few of the big free zones have announced like waiving of like certain fees for like 3 months for companies um, in their free zones,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a really good support because these fees can be, these fees are quite a lot, and if you don't have even in normal economy, it's quite difficult to cover those fees, and they've waived off some of those fees, especially like rents and stuff like that. So other things, it's like there are other things like, for example, you know how if you're in the country.
So just to give me some context, if you're in a free zone,
Yes.
am I right in saying you have to rent your premises off the government?
Yes, well, if you have like an office space, for example, so by the Dubai law, you have to have an office space to have a company. That's just law, yeah. So
But
these free zones,
can it be a private landlord, or does it have to be the
it can,
government in the
it
free
can,
zone?
yes, it can. Within the free zone, it can be a private landlord. It can be the free. Usually, all the free zones have like offices But also, what they do is the freezers also have flexi desks. So like,
Yeah.
if you go to Dubai Internet City, for example, you set up your company for like 15,000 dirhams. To get an office in Dubai Internet City, there are a lot of buildings there, mostly privately owned. It will run you minimum like 50, 60,000 dirhams for a year, even for a small one. If you do your setup and take the flexi desk one, then your flexi desk could be like 4,000 dirhams or 5,000 dirhams a month. Now, for most people who really don't need an office, that's the best option for them. What these free zones are doing now is they're saying, okay, now whether you are taking an office with whether you are taking the landlord, private landlord office, or you're taking the flexi desk package, you must have one option. You must have an
Yeah.
office. You just need you need to have an office address, compulsory.
Yeah.
Now, these free zones, of course, have a higher number of people who are just taking office from them or flexi desk, so they're waiving off some of those fees. That's really great. Also, Sheikh Mohammed announced like visa like fines from like the 1st of March would all be waived off. So like imagine you're hiring someone and then you are doing their visa, um, and then like suddenly because of this you cannot continue hiring them, and so you're not doing their visa anymore, and they are doing overstay, so they don't have a visa. For every day there's like a fine every day that adds up, and all of that is waived off till the end of the year. So
Okay, so help me. Let's paint a picture. So let's say we have a restaurant. It's a restaurant with, let's say, 20 members of staff. So this restaurant, when the lockdown happened, their revenue would have went pretty much to zero to maybe, let's say they did 5-10% takeaway or delivery or something like that. It was smart. That company, is there any support for them to keep their staff on, or would they have had to make everybody redundant?
Well, for restaurants that couldn't survive it, and just revenues went too low to run, many of them made their employees redundant. I think most restaurants actually made their employees redundant. The best answer I can give to the question though is I don't know yet for like businesses like restaurants, because the reality is I am yet to come across someone who actually got access to those funds. It's been announced, but it's not yet like delivered in a way that I can tell you that, okay, this is how you apply and this is how you get the money and things like that. And also on the other side, I know restaurants and companies who have made people redundant. Like I have a friend who just opened his restaurant was open for 2 months, and the COVID-19 situation hit,
Very
and
tough.
he has had to let like 2-3 of his employees go, because now the business just survives on
Like honestly,
deliveries.
the job retention scheme here, which is where they're paying the wages of any employees you put on furlough, that's been an absolute lifesaver here. That's one of the best initiatives they've introduced, because it's, you imagine you're running a business, your revenues tank to zero. You haven't got any demand to fulfill. So you need to put these staff onto furlough. And from the government's point of view, they want to avoid unemployment. Unemployment is dangerous, because eventually this public health crisis will be gone and people will return back to work and the demand will be there, and we hope that businesses will pick up. But if people have chronic unemployment, there's a lag in how long it takes them to find jobs again.
Yes.
So for the government to pay the wages, it's still economical to pay their wages now for them to have an employer to go back to, as opposed to being redundant afterwards and back on the job market. So
like, by the way, just as a question for you, like, who gets this loan? Like even private companies can get this wages?
Absolutely. So any company here in the UK, if you had somebody who you had employed before the crisis started, so they were with your company before the crisis has started, and you put them into furlough. So what that means is you fill out a form online, they go into furlough. So they stay at home and they're not working. They can't work for your company, okay? That person, the government will pay 80% of their wages.
Wow.
Free of cost. So if you were earning 10,000 dirhams, they're going to give you 8,000 dirhams. That's it. And that's plenty for you to live on until your employer is ready to take you back.
Okay,
Now,
so like,
here's the other thing, though. Here's the other good thing. If you're on furlough, let's say your company puts you onto furlough, you cannot work for that company. The government's going to pay you 80%, but there's still nothing stopping you from taking another job. You can go work for the NHS. You can become a nurse. You can help become a carer. You can become you can work in the grocery store. You know, you can do something that's going to help the economy right now, like in this coronavirus times, and then you can go back to your job afterwards.
wow, that's amazing. But is the government paying that loan? Is the government paying that wages as a loan to the company? Would the company
No,
has to pay? Wow.
paid. So obviously it's from taxpayers' money, right? It's from
Yes.
taxpayers' money, and we will have to pay it back over the next decade. And there'll be different measures the economy has to take to get that money back. But it just means that companies will not be going bust just because of this coronavirus. It's going to limit that, and it's going to help. It's just a massive saver. One of the biggest overheads you have is obviously after rent, you've got labor, and if you can somehow get some contribution back to help you navigate this through the labor, it's I know from speaking to lots of companies here, it's an absolute lifesaver. Like
Yeah.
especially like hospitality, like hotels, restaurants. The furlough scheme has been a lifesaver. The interesting thing though was some football clubs, they tried to furlough their employees, and then they got a massive backlash in the newspapers. Some super rich
Come
football
on.
club, yeah,
Come
taking
on.
advantage of it. And this is crazy, right? Like similarly in America has a similar system where they're paying the wages, and I think theirs is different. Theirs might be a loan. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on this one. But Harvard, one of the world's biggest universities with one of the biggest
I
trust
saw
funds,
that. I saw that.
they applied for funds, so they had to give it back.
Oh, that was just ridiculous, man. I couldn't believe it, man. Come on.
These are the times we live in. I don't
Yeah.
know, like what would make somebody with that much cash reserve in the bank account take advantage of. This is not for you. This is for us, a small hairdresser or a restaurant, or somebody with 2 or 3 employees where this is their livelihood. Like why?
Yes.
I don't get
Exactly.
it. Okay, so it seems like it's a bit of a precarious time there. I'd be a bit worried if I was running a business in Dubai. What's your sentiment? How do you feel about it? You're running a young early stage startup. How
Yes.
have you navigated this, and how have you thought about this coronavirus time from a business perspective? What's been going through your mind?
Well, this would take me back to, there's something very interesting you said when you earlier you said you think about it from you try to change the perspective of how you think about it, and you talked about it from a perspective of seeing places that is worse. Well, there's another perspective that is kind of completely different, another way to think about it as well, in terms of the obviously the obvious financial crisis we are gradually dipping ourselves in. Things are obviously bad, and you can see, like, one side of my business earns me money right now, and the other one I'm building towards launching it to in the near future, which was that future was supposed to be now. Both parts of my business have been hit hard. The one that makes money was hit hard because it's a production business and almost everything has been canceled. So this, I have trouble making money. The one that was set to launch now, or actually end of this month, is not in trouble, but cannot launch because people cannot really use it. It's something that involves people being able to do things to use it. And so you might say, well, it's really bad for you, but really, I was saying this to one of my friends who's a very successful entrepreneur here in Dubai. He runs one of the most popular moving service here in Dubai. And I said, more than it scares me, as bad as it is now, and as bad as it could be in the future, more than it scares me, it excites me, because maybe I'm just an irrationally optimistic person, that I'm able to just see beyond how bad things are. Or maybe I am right in my thought process, which is I just think when I just strongly believe that when things get this bad, then it can only get good. And I get it, it might get even worse. But the point is, markets like this are the ultimate test grounds for resilience and persistence. And at a certain point, you would even see markets like this or situations like this are the ultimate test of an entrepreneur. So, number one, I try to say, you know what, things are really bad, but this is like a testing, this is like a boot camp for me to actually not only test myself, well, I'm not testing myself because it's the real deal, it's not a test, but this is the time to actually train myself as an entrepreneur for difficult times, because whether a financial crisis or not, entrepreneurs would have difficult times. That's one. Number two, eventually, what I believe is, I strongly believe the people, the entrepreneurs, or just the people in general who would survive this would have a huge opportunity at the other side, at the other end of the line. So what I keep reminding myself is, you know what? If I am able to survive this, if my company is able to survive this tough, crazy time, then the upper hand on the other side is going to be huge. So I know this is all philosophical and thought process, but in the end, that's what really drives our actions. Like what I actually wake up and do tomorrow, like whether I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, okay, to hell with all of this, it's not working, and just be depressed, or I wake up tomorrow and be like, okay, where are we on our platform? Well, actually, this is going to be ready by this time, that once this is open. Okay, for example, let me tell you, I know I'm kind of talking too much about it, but let me tell you one aspect of how this is affecting how we think about things. Well, how the way we think about things is affecting what we are actually doing. So our platform is something where it's a platform where people can find spaces to do activities and stuff like that. Now people cannot do any activities. Now there's a bunch of gyms with studios that we've been talking to in the past, that when our platform is ready, they would list their spaces. So I ring them up and I say, hey, what's going on? Like, your gyms are closed. Like, how are you guys, just to manage the relationship? How are you guys holding up business? And then I realized most of them are still making some money. How? Because they've moved most of their classes, their fitness
Online.
classes, to online. Yeah. So I am saying, okay, you know what? We built a platform for spaces, but we actually ended up building a very robust and very powerful booking engine. So just like people can list their spaces, if this pandemic proves to stay longer than we imagine, we would launch our platform with allowing people to list their online fitness classes and
Mhm.
online dance classes activities, and
Yep.
people can book it through our platform. And actually, I had a meeting with my co-founder, and we realized actually our platform was perfectly for this. You list your thing, people book you from our platform, you get a commission. And so this is coming out of me just being optimistic every day. What can we
Yeah.
do differently today? How are we going to navigate this?
And
Interestingly, on the other side, on the other side of my business, as video production, I realized that many companies, including some of my clients actually, are resorting to delivering their some of their services live and online as well. So I'm saying, you know what? We just literally just from the beginning of this week, we've got a whole kit of like professional live streaming setup that we can actually run the CNN quality live streaming for you,
yeah.
and we already have someone lined up for that. So it's just navigating it while being optimistic. That's how I just believe there's it's huge upper hand on the other side, and that upper hand excites me so much. And look, this is probably wrong to say this, but I will say it anyways. Many people would go out of business. That's just the reality. That's just the reality of an economic time like this. It's almost worse to be alive than to be dead at this time. So many businesses will go out of business. Opportunity is going to go out of the roof by the time this is, we are close to the light of the tunnel. So my mission is to stay alive, because now it's survival mode, and if you can only thrive if you survive. So I'm like on a
Absolutely.
mission to survive, and I'm very optimistic about it.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think if somebody was to ask me a similar question, it'd be first you need to do whatever you need to do to survive, like you said,
Yes.
and then look for the opportunities. And I always remind people that, you were old enough to remember the 2007, 2008 crisis, a massive recession, massive downturn, all the major businesses which young entrepreneurs would look up to, they were struggling. So the hope for us running small companies was, how are we going to do that? But the thing I remind people of is, if you look at some of the biggest market cap companies today, they did not exist before the recession. Whether
Yes.
it's WhatsApp, whether it's Netflix, whether it's Airbnb, these
Aceplace,
companies,
Airbnb.
they did not exist before the recession, but they saw the opportunity in those times, and they were alive, and they survived the crisis such that they could pounce on those opportunities. I think you're absolutely right in your mindset. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I get this quite a lot from people looking to start their company. So they're not in a position to survive. They've got an idea. They've maybe got a little bit of a funds that they've saved up, and they're ready to start building the initial concept of their company and launch. What would your advice be to somebody in that position, given the current climate?
Oh, I have a beautiful one. I think this moment right now, Jazz, this is the moment to be building. See, here's the thing. When you have an idea and you want to build something, be it you want to start some cupcake shop when things open up, or like you want to start an online cupcake shop. I'm not talking only to core tech entrepreneurs. You could be starting a freaking cupcake online shop,
Yeah.
or you could be going full blown tech company like us. This is actually great time if you understand what is really going on, and or if you understand what it takes to start those type of companies. See, me and you have a good idea, especially you, because we've done it. The thing is, we are at the time. See, take a step back. What you just said, some of the highest market cap companies like Airbnb and all these companies that existed, that actually came about around the 2007-2008 crisis, one of their biggest upper hand was they had access to relatively cheap, high quality labor, because in that time many people lost their jobs. So like these companies, they were just bare startups, and they were able to hire some of the best guys in the market, because some of the best guys in the market just lost their job at that right time.
Yep.
At this moment, I think we are seeing much more professionals get put back into the market. Airbnb just let almost 2,000 people go. Almost every company I know within the category of companies that I kind of observe and look into have let a significant amount of people go. That's bad. That's really not good, and it's a tragedy. But if you talking about someone who has an idea and wants to build, this is probably one of the best times to be building. Not only because, anyways, what else could you be doing? You no matter where you are, whether you are in a job or not, you have more free time in your hands. That's one. But number two, you have a much bigger access to talent. So depending on at what level you want to be building. So if you're someone who have quite good amount of cash that you want to actually hire someone or put someone like a, let's say you want to build a platform, and you need like to put like a proper developer on a full-time kind of engagement, you have a better access to people of that caliber at this moment. And because of the amount of talent out there, naturally the cost of talent would come down, and that would
What
be
would
the
your
same thing with freelancers.
So that's a great piece of advice for somebody with some funds to hire somebody.
Yes.
So what would you say? I know I started Growhawk like this. What would you say about to somebody that has the idea, but they're bootstrapping the company? They need to get it to the point themselves where they can then afford to hire somebody else. Would it be similar advice to just build and try to build the product as best you can on your own?
Well, build on your own depends on what you're building. Like the term you use, build on your own. It just depends what you're building. I'm building a full-blown platform that allows people to find this and allows people to actually list their products and spaces so that people can actually find and book them, including the booking system. I can't build, my CTO can't build that by himself. He will need a front-end guy. So there's a bit
I
of
just
a
want to jump. I just
reality
want to jump
check.
in on that point, Mubarak.
Yes.
And I mention this to non-tech founders a lot. So I'm a non-tech founder, and
Yeah.
often, especially in the early stage, before you've got a good team of developers. I mean, I'm fortunate now where I can let the dev team do these things. But I remember from early days, people would say, "How are you doing this?" And when you don't have a developer, just because you're a non-tech founder doesn't mean you give up and say, "I have to have a developer." There are creative ways to still build out MVPs. What I mean by that is your job as a new founder is to find out, is there any traction? Is there any interest in this product or this idea I have? And you do not, and it's probably a bad thing to do, is to hire a developer and say, just spend loads of money building out the perfect software tech login platform that I envisage. What you want to do, and today's the best time to do this, is set up a quick WordPress website, a Wix website, a Squarespace website, set up a basic mailing list, and just see, is there any interest for my product? If you're seeing people sign up for your mailing list, they're visiting your website, they're reading your blog content, now you're in a position where, okay, I've got 100 people saying we can't wait until Aceplace's launch. We're super excited. Now you can say, okay, I think it's worth developing a really basic MVP. And again, you don't want a super senior developer that's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Just a nice junior to mid developer who can build you out the MVP so you can provide it to your early adopters to see, is this something that has traction?
Yeah.
So my point there, without laboring it, is you just want to do anything, even in this time. There's enough you can be doing, even with your young idea, which you've not launched yet, to see, is there traction? Blog content, create videos, post YouTube videos, use social media, see if people are interested in your product before you build it.
Yeah. So I agree with that, but not all of it. So I'll tell you what I think. I mean, if you notice, when I started my answer, I opened with depending on what you do. That's a very, very important keyword or key sentence, depending on what you do. Because
give me an example of where that doesn't work.
Okay, so before I give you an example of where that doesn't work, I'll tell you why I think that everything you said is perfect. It's true. Your immediate task as a founder is to figure out whether people actually even care about this. And for many founders, what they need is an Excel sheet, or what they need is to go out and talk to people and fill up the Excel sheet with what people, with their data points. Or for many other people, it's just set up a simple landing page. The original MVP for Dropbox was a video, like I get that, and I agree, it's true. But when you talk, okay, based on that, of course, many people, what working on their idea means is really just, doing all the research and background work that would actually make it worth it to actually build the real thing, which in other words is MVP. But when it actually comes to building the MVP, I think, and I might be wrong, that we are at a point in, especially within tech entrepreneurship. This is more specific to tech entrepreneurs, that what MVP used to mean has changed. So there's a very, very interesting article by one of the most respected product managers I know. She was in Dropbox, she was in Airbnb, and she's now in WeWork. And she talked about why you should be thinking how you can build minimum lovable product instead of minimum viable product. And yes, those are just fancy words, okay, you can change the name if you want. But really, the article is very interesting because it talks about where the state of user mindset is today if you build for that mindset with the same methodology of building MVP in 2005, you're playing a loser game. Why? In 2005, people were still willing, people were in the mindset of, the website could be really crappy and barely work. If it does what exactly the product is, people would use it. Also, at that time, there were much less options for things. Today, people have been ridiculously trained by Instagram's wonderful user experience, and most websites have much better user experience now. Even Wix have quite better user experience than many websites or platforms back in the day. If you build with the same old approach of making MVP, you risk losing your audience before they even get the opportunity to give you a chance, before they even give you a chance, So I'm kind of against, and also most people, and I see a lot of people talking about this on Twitter.
So I think just to clarify a point there. So I think let's use the example of cupcakes. So
before that, I just want to clarify something. Most people hide behind the curtain of MVP, and make crappy things.
Yes,
MVP shouldn't be the whole ultimate dream of the product, but it should at least work well. It is okay. Make it MVP by making minimum amount of features, like cut out on the features, not a crappy thing. So
agreed. So just to clarify, I think we're on the exact same page here. So if we were taking an example, just to drive this home for those listening, of you want to build cupcakes, and you have a hypothesis that people in your area, they want salted caramel cupcakes. I'm hungry because I'm fasting right now, so I'd love a salted caramel cupcake right now. So they want a salted caramel cupcake. That's your hypothesis. So what I'm saying is, in an environment where you cannot afford or take the risk to start baking the cakes right now, because you can't afford the chefs, you can't afford the ingredients, I'm saying you need to find creative ways to see if people are interested in salted caramel cupcakes. That could be setting up a landing page. That could be creating videos. That could be some blog content. Now, once we've established that there does seem to be some good demand for salted caramel cupcakes, we move on to the MVP stage. And I completely agree with you, Mubarak. There's too many companies using that as a scapegoat to create bad product. And you're absolutely right. You cannot, even in your MVP now, as soon as you've launched something to public, your first impression lasts.
Yes.
So if your first salted caramel cupcake is no good and people don't like the taste of it, you can't just say, "Oh, that's my MVP." They're gone. They won't give you another try. But what an MVP is, like you were saying, Mubarak, is you can cut off some features. Maybe your packaging isn't as nice. Maybe the wrapper around the cupcake isn't as nice. Maybe the finishing on the detail isn't perfect yet, but you're 80% there. And now you ship your MVP. You let the audience try that cupcake, and it should blow their mind away. There's no shortcut there.
I want to use that exact example to differentiate these things. If you wanted to do this salted caramel cupcakes, I'm not a dessert guy. That absolutely doesn't even appeal to me. By the way, I don't like chocolate, and people attack me for that. I just don't think
you're living in Dubai, which is like centered around desserts.
Exactly, man. So if you wanted to start a salted caramel cupcake shop,
tongue twister.
It's like I don't even know how to say it. If you are thinking salted caramel cupcake, it's what it is.
No, salted caramel cupcake shop.
Salted caramel cupcake shop.
Got it.
The freaking certificate.
I think we have a brand in our hands. Like, if anybody wants to comment below and take this idea, they can have it.
Exactly. So the thing is, the MVP for that, because the article talks about bad MVP as burnt pizza. Yes. So in terms of what we're talking about right now,
absolutely,
the MVP is not. If you want to do that, you don't want to make the MVP is actually not the cupcake. In the world we live in today, you want to think innovative. That's what you're all about, Jazz. The MVP could just be a simple landing page with the most beautiful picture of the ultimate cupcake. Like don't make the cup, because I love the way you put the question. You say, what if I want to make a salted caramel cupcake shop, but I don't have this, and that?
Yeah.
Well, make it in that situation. See, that's why these things really, 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 really matter based on and depend on what you are actually doing. See, that's why on many things that I could just look on the internet and find advice in terms of doing a startup general, I would want to talk to a mentor like Jazz, for example.
Yep.
Why? Because these things sometimes can heavily depend on what you do. See, in this point, in terms of this cupcake, you would get away with a simple one frame landing page with just the most beautiful picture of a potential ultimate cupcake. Yeah, because that delivers a promise but doesn't deliver a disappointment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you do the cupcake in the cheap way, would you say the MVP is the cheapest, fastest, well, the cheapest, fastest version of that
Can
cupcake
only disappoint.
can only disappoint. So
Yep.
there's no promise, there's only a disappointment. So the goal would be like, how can you deliver a promise in a way that people would actually believe without delivering also huge disappointment that would make
Definitely.
people disbelieve the promise.
And I think the point I want to drive home in this lockdown period, and this is something we've been doing. Whether you're a young, you've got an idea which is planted in your head, you want to have a testing mindset.
Mhm.
You always want to be testing. Like as you go along your business journey, you're going to have lots of different hypotheses. Should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? Should we do salted caramel? Should we do chocolate chip? Right? Now, the simple premise is to test A versus B. It's very basic, A/B testing. And a lot of the big companies we admire, again, Facebook, Airbnb, Instagram, these guys do multiple A/B tests on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And let me give you an example. I had a friend who's writing a book, and he came up and he said, which title do you like better? And he had 3 or 4 different book titles for this book he's wrote. I said, don't ask me. Why ask me? I'm one person's view.
My opinion.
You need to take a sample of your target audience. So this is what I said to him. I said to him, run a Facebook ad. Take the book visual, which you want to set as the book, and you do the 4 different titles that you gave me, okay? Put $50 to $100 Facebook ad targeted at your audience on each of those images and see what has the highest click-through. Done. You will see which one is more appealing, which book title is most likely to be picked up off the shelf. And again, we want to do this off empirical data, not off of our hunch. If I just said to him, I like the second title, that's me, that's one opinion. That means I picked up the book off the shelf. But I'm not representative of the entire audience. And coming back to our cupcake example, maybe when you run your landing page, you get 99 email requests saying, look, that cupcake looks phenomenal. I'm just not a fan of salted caramel. I want a chocolate chip cupcake shop.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's beyond me though. Yeah.
And that's where you can start to pivot. Some of the best companies we know and we look up to, they don't come up with all the ideas.
Yeah.
You know, Twitter, with the whole retweet and the @ symbols and all the things we know today, a lot of those features were recommended by the users that use Twitter. And Twitter just had to have an open enough mind to accept those requests.
That's a fancy word. Twitter just had to listen. That's it.
Exactly.
Like if someone did the landing page for the cupcake, it's not, you're not expecting like fancy email requests. Like you are not even expecting specifics. The point of an MVP is to give you signals. So you just want to like someone would, and of course you not just landing page, you post on Instagram and then someone connects. Do you have this in chocolate? And that's it. That's the signal.
That's your signal.
But back to the main reason we went down this route, Jazz.
So you don't like the chocolate chip route?
No, man. I'm not a dessert guy at all. The the point we were making earlier on advice to people who have an idea and want to start something. Apart from the fact that it's a great time to be building or to be working on something, it's insane how easy it is to create these simple test vehicles. Like you talk about like simple WordPress website. I don't know. I mean, I would, it would probably be nice if you put it up here so like people can see it, but I'll share with you later. Today is Wednesday. On Tuesday or Monday, I just wanted to take a break from work and thought, let me just do something fun. And I thought, you know what? Why not create a website? I never thought about creating a personal website for myself. I created a really nice, simple personal website in 1 hour.
What did you build it on?
I just built on Weblium. Do you know Weblium? It's like WordPress, but actually our company is one of the companies that have the unlimited lifetime white label. So we actually have the product sort of like on our own domain, and we can give it to other people, we can give it to our users to build their website on our platform. And it's incredible how the power, like I did that. I have 4 developers working full-time with my company, and I would usually consult one of them for any tech thing I would do. Like maybe I wanted, let's say I was helping a friend with a website. I would go, hey, I would speak to my front end guy. Hey, can you code this page for me? They don't even know I built that website. I decided my mission is to build a one-pager 100% by myself, and it's gotta be nice, including hosting. Okay, and including hosting and everything, it took me 1 hour 30 minutes. Less than 2 hours, definitely. And the website was online. If you go to mubarakm.com, I have a website. And for me, honestly, if you check the website, the copy is all over the place because I just wrote something quick just to see that this is actually going to work. But it's just amazing how people can actually do that. I am not a programmer, by the way. I know a bit of coding, but I am not a programmer.
And that's the beautiful thing, and that's what I've noticed over the last few years is it's never been an easier time to be a non-tech founder.
Yes.
And the reason for that is there's so many tools and plugins and different things you could be using and integrating, which allows you to prove a concept or prove an idea you have as an entrepreneur. You've got this idea, but you need to prove it before you give it to the developers and use up their time and resource building it out officially. And this reminds me of another point. I know we've spoken about this offline, Mubarak, is an entrepreneur needs to be able to, particularly in early stages, you have to get really good at scaling the unscalable. You've got to become good at doing the ugly work in a repetitive motion before you spend time polishing it up and letting it be automated. And the example I always use is of Brian Chesky at Airbnb.
Airbnb, yes.
And it's a classic. It's a classic example, right? And for those who don't know it, Mubarak, do you want to give the story?
I mean, go ahead. I mean, it's a story we both know about. It's so I'm so proud of.
Yeah, very basically, Brian Chesky knew at the time that from doing his, listening to his clients, he realized that the properties which were not selling the listings on Airbnb were because they didn't have good enough photos. The qualities of the photos on the listings were not good enough. So what could he do? Well, he had a premonition. He had a hypothesis that if we improve these picture quality, more listings will be booked. So he and his co-founder very simply went and knocked on the doors of his early day Airbnbers. And he took the photos himself with a camera. He took those high quality photos with a high professional camera and he uploaded them. And he saw that indeed his hypothesis was correct. And now, obviously, as you know it, Airbnb have professional photographers and it's a whole sophisticated system. But the premise he was able to scale the unscalable. And I think that's a mindset we can all take away into our worlds, which is, what is there that we have a premonition about and how can we quickly, easily, and cheaply test it so that we're not emotionally attached to it. We just test it. Did it work? No, scrap it. Try something else.
The thing is, see, that story has both an inspiring angle to it and a very practical learning from it as well. So if you look at, this is a company that's worth what? Probably more than $30 billion right now. And then you go back and realize that one of the founders, was going door to door and taking pictures just to make things work better. And of course, that quote in itself, you have to do the unscalable to scale, is a classic from Paul Graham. I think. I think he has
Yeah,
an
Y
essay on it.
Combinator. Yeah.
What I would add to what you said about people have to be able to do, because you just translated that as people should be able to do the ugly work. I would say you have to fall in love with the ugly work. You know, the thing is, if you are not willing to do something like that, then you're probably not excited enough about what you're doing to actually pursue it further. Because whether you look at that challenge, that early stage challenge of doing the non-scalable to scale, or you don't look at that specifically, things would get quite ugly at some point. Another thing is, I think it's important that we mention to people the difference between what, like when you see do the non-scalable to scale, many people would think, well, if I was building some Airbnb of today, I should go out there and take pictures. Well, for what you're building right now, maybe going out there to take pictures is not necessarily the important non-scalable thing that would add value. Because right now, people have iPhone X and all these great camera phones that that's probably unnecessary at a certain point. Maybe yours is more about, calling people or talking to each individual user of your platform. But you have to understand what is the important thing that could, give people a much greater experience of using my product, that is that looks non-scalable.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, if anybody knows what Growhawk does, that's our motto, right? Listen to your customers, listen to your clients, your subscribers, because that is where you get the hidden gems of where your company needs to go and what you need to improve on. And I think
Yeah,
if you have
it's actually interesting that you mentioned Growhawk, because actually a lot of what we've been talking about, Growhawk is a good solution for.
a lot of SaaS companies are using our platforms to do that. The whole, loop of feedback, iterate, listen, feedback, iterate, like that, you could use it platforms like ours, or again, you don't even need to do that. You can do it manually. Don't buy a software. Don't use a platform. Send out manual emails to your subscribers if you're a small company. Ring them. Like scale the unscalable. That's the whole point, right? You don't need a sophisticated solution like ours. Fine if you're a bigger company and you want to invest in automating it, it makes sense. But the whole concept of this chat we're having here is, do the right thing, even if it takes you a long time to do it, and you have to do it
Yeah.
manually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in doing that, you figure out, like, in doing that, you actually figure out how to automate things, or what is actually the most important thing in your product.
So, Mubarak, that brings me on to, hopefully we're going to be coming out of this public health crisis soon. What are your feelings? What's your sentiment around where things are heading? Are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? How are you feeling? What's your take on it? Do you think we're going to be in this situation for another couple of months? What's your take on it? What are you planning for?
I am very optimistic, but I'm practical. So I am optimistic in the sense that I'm so optimistic it's almost delusional. I'm like, it's like I believe something really, really great is gonna come out of this when we're able to overcome it. What I mean by saying I'm practical is that I don't think we're gonna be, like, when you talk about getting out of this, like, especially from an economic point of view, I don't think it's gonna be this year. I believe lockdown, maybe not 24 hours. We are already coming out of 24 hours, but some form of lockdown, social distancing, which as long as it exists, then we can't really come back to the way things,
And
we can't really
that's an interesting
come back.
point, is specifically within your type of business in the event space. I'm assuming that it's going to affect you quite greatly. That if businesses aren't allowed to hold events with more than 20 people, let's say, that's going to suddenly whittle down the number of listings you could have on your platform, right?
Massively. Well, not necessarily the listings. I would say the people to actually book the listings, because right now most of the companies or individuals that own these
The
spaces,
spaces are available.
the spaces are available, and whatever is a solution that can help them um, grow their business as quick as possible when things open again,
Mhm. But
they are
naturally,
interested in it.
if I'm somebody who would ordinarily book one of your spaces, let's say I normally book one of your spaces to hold a seminar, and
Mhm.
I'm delivering a keynote speech in front of normally, let's say, 100 people. If I'm having to social distance, maybe I can only let 30 to 40 people in the room. So naturally,
Exactly.
my income stream is going to be less, which is going to make it less viable for me to book your space.
Or
And that's
maybe
where the
not.
challenge is going to be.
Yeah, or maybe you can't at all, so what we are doing right now is, so we are approaching these spaces. We were recently in contact with a big hotel group, and their question is, how the hell do we get to ramp up our revenues again, at least when things open again and people can use our facilities and our hotels. And they realize actually we are the solution, because you got to realize we are very connected to the real estate space. The real estate space was already struggling before COVID, like this, especially when you talk about specifically we're in the commercial real estate space, which is already, um, demand for it is already declining, and supply of it, especially in this region, is very, very high. And this was already happening, but then COVID-19 came up and it's speeding up everything. So by the time we come out of COVID-19 and most companies have learned remote work and realize that they don't need this size of office and things like that, what needs to happen is that most owners of spaces or offices especially have to repurpose their spaces into the kind of spaces that people would need. Because in the end, people are very, everybody needs community. People will still come together and do things. It's almost in our evolutional
Yeah.
characteristics to do that. It's just how we do that will be different. So we are approaching this space and saying, look, the future of the way people are going to use your spaces is no longer going to be yearly or lease, 10 years lease anymore. You have to give people access to your spaces on more of the sharing economy structure, or the gig economy. So basically, we're approaching these spaces and saying, look, we are almost at the verge of trying to start educating the market right now on saying, look, you have a space, COVID-19 has hit, you don't even know when this is going to open again, and when it opens, where are you going to start from? Well, we have those ideas for you. What you need to do is to change the way you actually deliver your space as a product
Mhm.
to this, to this structure, so people can actually have better access to it.
Just thinking out loud, your platform could be pivoted to a platform which is known as the specialist for listing spaces which are pre-built to be socially distanced.
Yeah, actually, we are looking at actually.
Imagine you become the brand that if I'm a somebody who wants a space and I don't want to worry about hygiene, sanitizing, socially distance, all this stuff. I just want to host an event. I book through you guys. You guys take care of all of that. I turn up. All the stickers are going to be on the floor. The markings are going to be there. The chairs are going to be 2 meters apart. There's going to be hand sanitizers everywhere. I just go in and do my event. That is a way of being a
Exactly.
bit more opportunistic in these times.
And that's a beautiful thought, because we were just considering the idea of putting a small tag that says social distancing compatible, something like that,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
which spaces provide you with like the ability to space out things. And because we don't know, we might still be doing social distancing till
You
2021. That's
you
what I'm
you could. You're absolutely right. You could from your team vet every listing. So the people who are listing, they have a responsibility to ensure they're socially distanced. You vet them, and then you give them a badge once approved. So you have certain
Yes.
criteria, like 2 meters apart, da, 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 do all of that, and then they get like a badge. So if I'm booking a space off your website, I know that they've been vetted and it's socially distanced. People are going to be 2 meters apart. There's a in and out system, so people aren't mixing. There's a
Yes.
one-way system, things like that.
Yeah,
Pretty interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because I think and this is important for anyone that is doing anything to know that anybody who thinks COVID-19 is going to go and then we're going to come back to normal doesn't understand how the world works. So,
No.
like the level of hygiene demand for spaces, for example, where people go to do things or restaurant will be significantly high because COVID-19 is teaching us something that we're going to keep a lot of even after
and if anybody is unsure about that, just think about East Asia. So when East Asia had the previous coronaviruses, whether it's SARS or MERS, even years after that, if you go to Japan, you go to Hong Kong, you go to China, it's very common for a certain percentage of the population to wear masks and to walk around with hygiene practices, which we're looking at today. So like you're saying, Mubarak, these are not behaviors which are just going to go away. We're going to almost live with these kind of behaviors for a long time until they start to wean away.
Yes. I mean, again, back to the question you asked, both in terms of the economy or, just the pandemic, I don't think we're going to see I think we're in for it for the whole of 2020, where I think till the end of
That's my view.
2020, we will still be like social distancing, we will still be...
and the reality is the ultimate switch is a vaccine, and there's not going to be a vaccine until at least summer 2021.
Yes.
So things are going to be in this sort of limbo mode for a long time. Socially distanced, the new normal, as politicians are calling it.
Yeah, but
whatever it is, we as entrepreneurs and founders, we can't live under a rock. We need to come out of the rock, find ways to innovate, because the rest of the public are looking at us to keep things moving. Whether it's sporting events, whether it's softwares and companies or techs and meeting spaces, we have a responsibility, we have an onus to adjust safely within the guidelines so we can keep things moving on. Because if we don't keep things moving on, jobs will be gone, people won't be able to spend, and it's going to be a vicious cycle of economies all dwindling down. And there's not going to be any way out until a vaccine comes. And we can't hide in a rock for 9 more months.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the pandemic and the health sector, I believe the nurses and the doctors, kudos to them, and they are the ultimate heroes. But in terms of, man, big one. But in terms of the economy, we are the lifeline of the economy, man. Like, anyways, in Dubai, for example, like, I think pretty much most of the world, even in America, SMEs are the backbone of the economy. And this doesn't necessarily mean you're an SME, you're going to stay an SME. Just entrepreneurship in general is the lifeline of the economy. So, of course, I feel a sense of responsibility in that. But yeah, I mean, we are definitely look. Vaccine is going to come in 2021, summer 2021, probably, maybe slightly earlier. But then, how much time is it going to take before the vaccine is spread all around the world? And then because until that happens, travel will not come back to normal, and then most things will not come back to normal. So
100%.
we are on. It's quite obvious that we are on for a long run.
And that's a very important point you made there, Marek. A lot of people are overlooking it. Is when we're saying that there could be a vaccine by, they're saying, the scientists are saying like summer 2021. That means a viable vaccine has gone through the clinical studies. It doesn't mean that we have enough of those. So if you imagine, whether it's the UK, they will need 60 million if it's a single dose. If it's a double dose vaccine, they're going to need 120 vials, 20 million vials of this vaccination. And the whole globe is going to need them.
Yeah.
So this is 7 billion plus if it's a single dose vaccination. So there's going to be months of ramp of production, which is pushing you to Q3, Q4, 2021. So definitely it's a long game. It's definitely something we're going to have to learn to live with. And it's unprecedented times, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very unprecedented. I mean, I have a funny story for you. Today, I saw that Dubai Mall. So, Emirates Mall. You've been to Emirates Mall, quite, I believe.
Yeah, have they built a cinema?
They did a cinema outdoor. Like, basically,
I saw it.
So there's one part of the parking of the rooftop parking where there's this place that is a big screen, so they turn that screen into a cinema, and people turn up in their car. And, I mean,
kudos. It's innovation.
Yeah.
And it's like these are the things we all need to do, because at the end of the day, people are going to still want to watch movies. They're going to want some escapism. They're going to want, during the stress of their day and their incomes, they're going to want to take an hour out. And if these companies are being smart enough to innovate in that way, then that's an example for all of us. What can we do with our companies? I know we phoned all our clients to see how can we adapt our platforms, and we've come up with creative ways to help people. Again, bespoke, sometimes not even within the platform, just manually helping them do what they need to do in this moment of crisis. And these are the moments that your clients will appreciate. They'll remember that you were there and you adapted for them in these difficult times, and they'll remember that, because these times, yep.
And to add to that, these are the moments that really, like, people who are not willing to do that are not going to make it through. The thing is, you do that, and there's something I want to tell you. It's just when you ring up your client and support them like that, like, and help them like that, even though you probably don't need to, you establish something in their mind that makes your brand almost like, at least with them, just so strong. Why? Because in the end, people operate based on how they feel. So someone could have a better product than you, 10 times better product than you, and because you were the guy who treated them like that and supported them like that, they want you because they feel safe with you.
Absolutely, completely agree. And it's that emotional connection. You just, and like, it's not something you need to teach yourself. You just need to be human. You need to listen, be human, and do the right thing by your clients. Like, if you were in their shoes and you needed the support, you'd want that support. And so it's being able to deliver that for your clients without expecting anything. And I think that reminds me of a great quote, which is, character is your ability to do things for people without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
And if you have character in these times, that's definitely going to go a long way to supporting you and your business.
Yeah.
Any departing comments, Mubarak? Anything you want to leave the viewers with during these tricky times?
I mean,
you're never a down person. You're always super smiley. So for those that are feeling down, who their revenues have gone down, they've undone their last 2 years worth of work, and they're just feeling super down. They can't get the energy to wake up and start working. They leave their laptop tucked away. What's your advice for these guys?
Well, the truth about things is that if you are there, that means things are really, really, really bad. Like, or at least that's how you perceive it. You know, that things are just really bad. Whether it's that bad or that's how you perceive it, you've lost your job or whatever. I just want you to really realize how much impact your mindset have. And I know, motivational speakers talk about mindset, and I don't even believe in motivational speakers. I just think they just say a bunch of things to make you feel good. But the reality is, what would make a difference in what's going to happen? Because if you feel like this, you don't want to feel like this in the next 2 weeks. What's going to make the difference between how you would feel, what's going to determine whether you feel like this or worse from in the next 2 weeks, is going to be determined by what you do in the next week or in the next amount of time you have before 2 weeks. And what you're going to do between now and the next 2 weeks is going to be determined on how you are over here. Yep. So everything is linked up. So people like to think, I mean, maybe you might think, well, so what does what I have here have to do with what's actually going on with me? Well, so much, because if you are messed up here, then you just don't do the right things. You don't make the right decisions. You don't take the right actions. If any actions, and then you end up in the worst place. Ultimately, things are going to be better. That's the thing about when things are really, really bad, they can only go up. But how they go up for you determines by how you think about things. So I think you just have to, whatever you need as a tool to help you get out of that. It could be sending private messages to Jazz to ask him some questions or to get some mentorship or to get some advice. But just don't live in it in yourself. And the biggest thing is, don't leave it in your head. The number one step of getting out of it is talking to someone about it.
Yep. It's
incredible how much can be solved by just talking about it. It's incredible. So I think the number one thing is talk to someone about it and then make your way out of it.
Completely agree. And I think just to wrap that and almost go a full 360 circle back to where we started the conversation, which is perspective.
Exactly.
It's all perspective. Like if you're feeling really down and you're feeling like, look, I've lost 80% of my revenue, which I've been working on for the last 2 years. Like, why don't you look at what's left in the glass? You're still fortunate enough to wake up, to have food on the table, to be healthy, to have an opportunity to still go at this business. And so when you start looking at what you do have and the opportunities you have in front of you, and we spoke briefly during this episode of some of the countries and residents of these countries which are less fortunate, who are now literally struggling to find their next meal, then I think that helps you become more grateful and have a better perspective around, this is just a game we're lucky to play, which is business. And each day we wake up and we have an opportunity to build companies and build exciting things. It's a blessing, right? It's something which we're lucky to do.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you, Jazz. That's so spot on there. Sometimes I look at just the fact that this is the game I get to play and be so grateful. Like some people literally can't play this game. Some people don't even understand why we find this game okay, like this, with all the uncertainty and difficulties that come. Some people think, I've been offered jobs with I've been with incredible amount of money, like as salaries, and I've literally turned down all of them because I cannot imagine myself doing anything else. That's how much I love this. And so the fact that I was able to land something like this as my career, and this is what I'm building, even though I'm still at the very early stage, I'm so freaking grateful. It's incredible. That in itself is one of the things that gives me a big, great feeling.
Awesome. I think we'll leave that there. I think that's a great message for everybody to take away with them. Mubarak, thanks for jumping on, man.
Thank you so much, man. I will speak to you soon.
Cool. And for those who want to find out a bit more about Aceplace, where can they go?
You can just go to aceplace.com.
Aceplace.com. I'll put the details in the description. All right, man. See you in a bit.
All right. See you in a bit, man. Bye.